Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. You'll get 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Plus, enjoy access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection. And with the welcome offer of 150,000 points, your business can soar to all new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 187 of Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. And I'm joined by the best co-host in the game. You've heard him on the Tough Cover radio show. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at @MarkHenryJr_. Mark, how are you doing today?
I could not be doing any better. I mean, we talk about Victory Mondays coming on here. This is one of the ultimate Victory Mondays. Here we are, 2 weeks away from the Super Bowl. Only 2 teams left, and our Eagles are one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've already got chat hopping here because we're late getting started. Some technical difficulties. Mark's on the road. We've even got Krabby Oldman here in the chat saying that, you know what? He doesn't even need us. They can start their own show right in the comments section. So appreciate you guys standing by. And we are here to recap all of the I should say both of the conference championship games. I'm saying all like there's 6 conferences or something, but we're going to get into Eagles Commanders. We're going to get into Chiefs Bills. Let's start with Eagles Commanders, and the Eagles put it on the Washington Commanders 55-23. Mark, they were a missed 2-point conversion and a missed field goal away from putting 60 up in a conference title game, which is just incredible. And this game started in probably a frustrating way for the Eagles fans because the Commanders opened the game on an 18-play drive that saw conversions on 3rd and 6, another 3rd and 6. They had conversions on a 4th and 5 and a 4th and 2 before they finally kicked a field goal on a 4th and 3. And that can be frustrating to watch as a fan as they're just continually grinding down the field and they take half of the first quarter up. And I remember tweeting like during the commercial break that if you continue to force 3rd and mediums to 3rd and longs, they're not going to be able to convert that way the whole game. And I think it alleviated a lot of that angst when the Eagles answer with a 1-play, 60-yard touchdown drive via Saquon Barkley. And then you get the Washington fumble, another touchdown, and momentum was firmly on the Eagles' side until Jake Elliott missed that field goal. And then you could just start to feel like the collective breath come out of Eagles fandom, especially on Twitter. Washington pulls it back to a 2-point game. But the Eagles really, they largely put this game away before half with the touchdown, recovering a fumble on the kickoff, scoring another touchdown before halftime. And when it's all said and done, the Eagles scored 8 touchdowns on 11 possessions in this game and had a missed field goal. They only punted 2 times. This was a phenomenal offensive performance for the Eagles. Saquon Barkley, 15 carries, 118 yards, and 3 touchdowns, averaged almost 8 yards per carry. And he only needs 30 yards now in the Super Bowl to take the all-time single-season rushing record from Terrell Davis, which he set in 1998. So one of the greatest seasons by a running back of all time. Mark, what were your thoughts on the Eagles offense in this game?
I said it on I did a post-game show for my radio station, and I said it on there. It's the Jalen Hurts response after the Steelers game. Is that what y'all wanted to see? After 2 weeks or, after a season of, I feel like, some unfair criticism being levied at a quarterback who's been in the Super Bowl, who prior to this year had 3 seasons as a starter with 3 playoff seasons. And he came out and had, maybe you can correct me, I think his pretty much by far his best game of the year in his biggest spot of the year. And I felt like he played a damn near perfect game of football. I saw PFF graded him as the highest rated player in the entirety of conference championship weekend. Not just quarterback, the highest rated player. And, there's a lot of plays you can point out, a lot of stats you can point out, a lot of things that he did that you could point out. But to me, there's nothing more the play to me that wraps up the game is 4th and 5 at the 45, and you throw a go route to AJ Brown. And I think the balls that play call took on so many levels, from calling the play call, from going for it on 4th and 5 and making that decision, and not punting it. Obviously, it was 14-12 at the time. I think right around the 2-minute warning. So you don't get that. You're handing the ball right to Washington at midfield. You're basically conceding at least a field goal if you don't get that 4th and 5. And they don't just take a crosser or a slant or try to throw something, lateral. They go down the field and they take the shot against man single coverage on the outside, and the shot that they took a ton in that Commanders game previously, and it paid off there. And the ball's to call the play, the ball's to go for it. But then it takes a lot for Jalen to pull the trigger there, and instead of taking what maybe an easier route to a completion for a conversion, he changed the game in one throw. I feel like any chance the Commanders had to come back, I don't know if it ended right there, but it significantly changed the chance of it right there.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts goes 20 of 28 in the game, 246 yards and a touchdown. He only took 2 sacks, and one of them he just had no chance. A gap runner just was unblocked. But he has 3 rushing touchdowns, and he drops the dime you were talking about to A.J. Brown on the 4th and 5. That was a key spot. This was the Eagles' best EPA per drive since the Super Bowl win over the Patriots. It was a 94th percentile game for Hurts. It was actually his second best game of the year by EPA, and GGN was calling out the Bengals game. Was also unreal for Jalen Hurts, but really good day for the Eagles offense. And I thought they hit all of the right buttons at all of the right times. And on the flip side, the defense did a great job too. And like I said at the beginning, that first drive is frustrating, but it set a tone for the rest of the day that Washington was going to have to earn everything. And Washington only had a 36% success rate on early downs in this game, only an 18% early down rushing success rate. And so they were unable to sustain their late down successes from the first drive, although it was still really good at 48%. And Jaden Daniels had to do it all. He had no run game to help him. And I thought Daniels had a good game, 29 of 48 for 255 yards and a touchdown. He throws the interception at the end on a prayer. He also rushed for 48 yards and a touchdown. So I thought Daniels played well. But this was a game that the Eagles dominated in the trenches. Jalen Carter had 8 pressures in this game. Nolan Smith had 4 pressures. And Nolan Smith, by the way, 34 pressures in his last 9 games after having only 21 pressures in his first 27 career games. And they got contributions everywhere. Zach Bond forces a fumble. He recovers another fumble, had 12 tackles and a tackle for loss. Oren Burks, a guy that the fan base was convinced should be benched for Jeremiah Trotter Jr. 2 weeks ago, led the team with 7 defensive stops, and he also forced a fumble and had a sack. Guys stepped up everywhere, but the biggest one to me is Quinyon Mitchell, who almost blanks Terry McLaurin in this game. McLaurin lined up against Mitchell on 36 routes. He was targeted 4 times and only had 1 catch for 7 yards in those routes. So it was a great game all around for the defense, I thought. And I was really annoyed with that field goal drive before half. But outside of that, I thought the Eagles defense played phenomenally.
So I've been a little critical of the defense this morning, and it's just because of the 2-minute drill thing before halftime and the first drive. And I guess you could also throw in that second touchdown drive that made it 14-12 as a frustrating drive, but obviously that had a fake punt in it that makes you feel a little differently about the drive. They got the stop, and then they didn't obviously get the ball back. But I'd say I wonder what the defensive numbers and some of those numbers would look like if it was the last 31 plays the Commanders ran. They only gained 74 yards. I think it's their last 4 drives. So if you took those 4 drives out, I'd be curious to see kind of how the defense was for the first 35, 40 minutes of the game in terms of some of those numbers, because I do think the Commanders' offense really died there. Once it became 34-23, and then 41-23 especially, they didn't have any answer, obviously. So, but the defense, I struggle and go back and forth on the defense because they're the best defense in football, and I'm not trying to take that away or be too negative, but it might just be one of those years where the best defense in football can get got. Like we saw it last week against the Rams at the end of the game. And I'm probably focusing on the negative too much with the defense and focusing on things to worry about. And maybe that's because we have the Chiefs on the horizon in my mind after watching what they did last night. But those last, I'd say, 3 minutes against the Rams, and then those 3 drives, the touchdown drive, and then the field goal drive before halftime, those are the drives that scare me against Kansas City. Are we going to have a situation again, just like 2022, where we felt like we had this really, really good defense that then once they play Mahomes, we don't feel like it's a really good defense anymore? That's my fear. That's kind of the thing I'm scared about. I kind of think Kansas City's going to be able to score like 24, 27, 30 plus points. And I think it's going to be on the offense. I think it's going to be on the, obviously, I don't think they're going to need 55, but I do think it's going to be on the offense to show up similarly to the way that they did with the balance that they did in the passing game and the running game and being able to mix up things. It just felt like, and part of this could be Washington's defense, but it just felt like it was so easy for us to move the ball. And there were so many open options when Jalen would drop back to throw. It didn't really feel like he had to throw guys open or wait too long on too many of those dropbacks. And then obviously Saquon running for whatever it ended up being, nine yards per carry or whatever it is. It obviously what the offense did yesterday is not repeatable, but I think that offensive showing has to strike fear into the people who thought, oh, I'm sure there's Chiefs fans out there and Bills fans out there who were watching the first game and weren't worried about the Eagles going into the game if they had to play them in the Super Bowl because of what they looked like on offense. I think whoever you are, you've got to worry about this Eagles offense now. And the opposite way, not us.
Yeah, that's nice. So looking at, if you eliminate the fourth quarter and just look at the first 3 quarters, so it eliminates the majority of those drives you're talking about, the Eagles defense allowed 0.083 EPA per play, which in the regular season, that would rank as the 29th best defense in the NFL. However, that's probably a product of playing a conference championship offense, because that was still better than the second best defense of the weekend in the Bills by like 70%. The Bills and Chiefs were both at 0.2 or worse, and the Eagles were at 0.083. And so, it wasn't as it wasn't as good. It wouldn't have been a good like regular season performance in those first 3 quarters necessarily, but I think the playoffs are just a little bit different when it comes to that.
That's totally fair. It's totally fair.
So, also, one thing I wanted to point out on the offense that I didn't, but talking about guys stepping up, you have Tyler Steen step in and play the entire game at left guard. And the Eagles end up platooning centers with Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens and perform pretty well. And the Eagles are basically sitting in a place now where you assume those guys are if they were good enough to play yesterday, you assume they're going to be as near 100% as you can be in 2 weeks. So the Eagles are going to hit the Super Bowl with 21 of 22 starters healthy. And the one guy they're missing in Nakobe Dean has been replaced by Oren Burks, who's played really well. So the Eagles are in a good place in terms of health. I was also going to mention this too. The last time an NFL team rushed for 7 touchdowns in a playoff game was 1940 when the Chicago Bears did it to, you guessed it, Washington, and they beat them 73-0 in a playoff game. So the 1940s were a different era. Can you imagine a 73-0 playoff game today?
That's why I'm always shocked when things are like, he's the first person to do this. I'm like, there was some crazy stuff going on in the 40s and 50s.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we could also talk special teams in this one because Jake Elliott misses a long field goal in this one. The Eagles do fall for a fake punt, but then you also get the Will Shipley forced fumble on a kickoff return. You also get Will Shipley ripping off a big return at the beginning of the game, and it obviously doesn't end up mattering because Saquon houses the next play, and that would have been a touchdown from 90 yards out. But shout out to Will Shipley, man, getting a kickoff return out to the 40, forcing a fumble on a kickoff. He also rips off a big run and scores his first career touchdown. But what's your level of concern when it comes to special teams potentially costing the Eagles in the Super Bowl?
I think it's high when it comes to to Jake Elliott. And I'm at the point where you cannot take a 50-plus yarder with Jake.
Nope.
If you're at the 33, it's punt or go. We can't be kicking field goals past 50 at this point. Honestly, I don't know if you can kick, like, if it's a 47-yard field goal, I know that the 50 number is like what we have in our head because he hasn't hit one over 50, but I don't know if I feel comfortable taking a 47-yarder, which is just it's unacceptable stuff in 2025 with how the kicking game has revolutionized. It's been my fear all year long, and now that we're in the Super Bowl in a game that I think is going to be decided by the skinniest of margins, I think these are the two best teams in football, and I think there's not a lot separating them. Jake Elliott could absolutely cost the Eagles the Super Bowl. There's not a doubt in my mind that could happen.
Yeah, the Eagles also need a new long snapper next year. I saw some pretty shoddy long snaps from Lovato in this game. And Braden Mann, shout out to him. One of those, he corralled a really bad snap and got it down, and Elliott got it through. But so some definite stuff that needs looked at on special teams. And, those smallest of margins win a game or decide games. But yeah, the only way I'm trying a 50-yard field goal in the Super Bowl is if there's like 4 seconds left and it's a tie game or we're down by 1, because Jake Elliott's still a higher probability than a Hail Mary. But outside of that, at the end of a game or half, I just don't think you let him try it because it's been really bad.
No, I agree. I'm trying to get Kempski's stat or the snap report here. I'm curious what the Milton Williams to Jordan Davis breakdown was, because obviously big play from Jordan Davis, who has not played a ton down the stretch, if I'm not mistaken.
He didn't play a lot in this game either.
Yeah.
I think it was 13 snaps.
Wow.
Yeah, get this. So Jordan Davis, 13 snaps, 10 of them were pass rush snaps, and he ends with 3 pressures and a sack. 30% pressure rate from Jordan Davis. That's insane. Jordan Davis had a higher pressure rate than Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
But yeah, Milton Williams played 41 snaps. Jordan Davis played 13. Moro Ojimo played 35.
What's your take on how the D-line rotation has kind of broke out?
Fangio is playing his top guys a lot. This isn't the same rotation that you've seen in the past with Schwartz or Gannon. And I guess it's working. Like, Jalen Carter's still dominating. Nolan Smith's still dominating, and they're your 2 highest snap getters. I think that Josh Sweat, you needed to have had a better rotation for Josh Sweat because he's really fallen off. He was actually out-snapped by Jalix Hunt in this game.
Wow.
Josh Sweat hasn't had a sack since the Pittsburgh game, and he hasn't had a 4-pressure game since the Carolina game. So, but we've seen this with Sweat before. Like, this is a Sweat thing. Sweat's got the knee thing that everybody was worried about coming in. Sweat is a guy that wears down. It seems like Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, it seems like these guys can stand up to that level of play. I think Josh Sweat's a valuable piece on this pass rush, and I want him back next season. but I do think he's the guy that you've got to have on more of a snap count than some of these other guys. So that's the only negative effect I've seen from it so far, is that Josh Sweat's really seemed to have worn down.
Yeah, I was just looking at some numbers here. Out of 153 snaps, Josh Sweat has a 53.8 PFF pass rushing grade in the postseason. 0 QB hits, 1 tackle for loss. It does. I was actually going to bring that up. It does feel like I haven't heard Josh Sweat's name at all. I think he made a play in that Rams game. Might have been a tackle for loss. Probably was when that tackle for loss came. But yeah, has not been a ton from Sweat. To go back to the positive side of things. Cooper DeJean being on this team instead of being a top 10 pick in the draft like he should have been is unbelievable. The fact that watching how he diagnoses screens, how he thinks the game before the snap, it just feels like he knows where the quarterback's going more than the quarterback does sometimes. It's pretty rare stuff to see from a rookie, and even rarer stuff to see from a slot corner. Even the way that he's able to tackle in the backfield and lay the boom a little bit. It's Cooper DeJean. I mean, he could not have panned out better.
Yeah, absolutely. The NFL was crazy for letting Quinyon Mitchell fall as far as he did, but they were certifiably insane for letting Cooper DeJean fall that far. And that's not revisionist history. You guys can check mine and Mark's public draft boards. We had those guys really high way back then. So
I had DeJean as CB1.
Did you? I didn't remember you had him that high.
So I might have ended up bumping Arnold above him now that I'm thinking about it. He was CB1 all off season, and I think I ended up bumping Arnold above him now that I'm
okay. I'm going to look it up while you talk here.
Yeah, I didn't think Blankenship was fantastic in this game. There was a couple plays early where I felt like they picked on him a little bit. The McLaurin touchdown, I felt like he took a pretty bad route at that play. But other than that, I mean, he's been pretty incredible this year. To me, this game's all about the offense. I mean, putting out 55, the most in conference championship history. I think it was almost the exact same amount of passing and rushing yards in this game. They did everything they wanted. They did whatever they wanted, and you have to give Nick and Kellen and Jalen and more than anything, Howie. It all comes back to Howie, and what Howie's put together here is nothing short of amazing. And the fact that we're in the midst of Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts being the first quarterback and coach in Eagles history to go to the second Super Bowl, not together, just in general. No other coach has coached in 2 Super Bowls. No other quarterback for the Eagles has played in 2 Super Bowls, and here we are, and we're all going to talk Jalen, we're all going to talk Saquon, but I mean, the most valuable person in this organization is Howie Roseman.
Yeah. So I've got it up here. You had Cooper DeJean as CB2, 12th overall. Yeah. I had him as CB3 at number 18 overall. But absolutely insane that he fell to the second round. I remember distinctly, I can search it up on Twitter and find it, but I remember distinctly that after his pro day, when his RAS scorecard came out, I said that Vic Fangio is going to have a blast with Cooper DeJean and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in the same secondary, and it came true, and it's been awesome. So, all right. Anything else quickly on this game before we move on to the AFC title game?
We did get away with Devontae catching that ball and his foot going out of bounds. It looked like a little bit.
I thought so, yeah.
Yeah, there's some debate about was it in and then it inched out. I thought it was out right away when the second foot came down. And, people want to complain about the refs in this game. And I got to tell you, Shane, we're going to get to the next game. I have hit my limit for the word ref and the officials and calls. And I want to talk football. I'm so sick of everything coming back to refs. And in this game, Commanders fans all over the internet are still right now on Monday morning talking about the officiating of a game that they lost 55-23. Yeah. They lost by 9 points more than they scored in the game. And my answer to even though I'm saying we got away with one, teams get away with ones in every single game. What I would say is they had the option to challenge it. We ran a play. Yeah. They didn't.
Yeah, I never feel bad for one of those that you could drop a challenge flag on. Like, it's an explosive play in the first half. If you even think it's close, just throw the red flag. I mean, that's always my thing with those. Throw the red flag and go from there. And I mean, yeah, I thought he was out. I thought you should have thrown the flag pretty clearly there. You didn't. That's on you. But I will say, I mean, there was an official on each end looking right down the sideline. That doesn't mean they got it wrong or they got it right. But yeah, you had a chance to throw the flag there. I mean, like we get the holding call, the missed holding call. I think it was on Saquon on a pass rush, and that turned into a big play. Okay, like I mean, Jalen Carter's been held all season. Like some of those calls will get missed. I saw a lot of people complaining about like the Jalen Carter hitting the center. It's like the center literally hit him in the helmet first. Like it should have been offsetting penalties. It should have been hands to the face on both guys, but that I thought it was fine. The one that would maybe irk me is the one where Saquon got hit going out of bounds, because that's a tough spot to be in as a defender. But at the same time, two-hand push him. Don't try to lower the boom on him when he's going out of bounds.
Yeah.
Like so, I didn't really have a. I thought that the one with AJ Brown and Lattimore, like. I think they both got into each other's helmets. I think the reason the flag flies on Lattimore is AJ, when the officials start to come over, puts his hands like this, and Lattimore continued to push AJ Brown backwards. So the flag's going to fly on him. Like it's just, I thought the officiating was largely fine in this game. And there's been games where I haven't thought that. But yeah, you can't complain about officials when you get beat 55-23.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay, let's get into the Chiefs-Bills game. And for this one, man, this was kind of a wild game. And the Chiefs end up winning 32-29. The Chiefs moved the ball at will in the first half. They scored a touchdown on 3 of their first 4 possessions. They moved to the Bills' 23-yard line on the other possession before a fumble ended the drives. The Chiefs didn't even go to a third down on the first 2 drives. The Bills' offense wasn't quite as good. They scored 2 touchdowns and kicked a field goal on 5 first-half possessions, so you're 16-21 at halftime. In the second half, the Chiefs had back-to-back punts while Buffalo scored a touchdown to take a 1-point lead. They go for 2, and it fails. But then you get Buffalo failing on a 4th and 1 at the Kansas City 41-yard line. Review stuff aside, and it gives the Chiefs the ball, and they score, hit a 2-point conversion to take a 7-point lead, and the Bills matched it. So the Chiefs kick the field goal, and it sets the stage for a Josh Allen game-winning drive, down 3 with 3.5 minutes left. And they're stopped on a 4th and 5, Steve Spagnuolo, crazy blitz. Josh Allen made a superhuman play to even get the ball out. And it sucks. Like, it just sucks that that's the way that a game ends. Anytime I don't ever want to see a ball hit a guy's hands and then hit the turf, and that's what ends up ending a game. Like, you'd rather it not come down to that. But I mean, I thought it was a phenomenal game, but I thought Josh Allen played good, 22-34 for 237 and 2 touchdowns. He rushed for 39 yards. His defense let him down. This was a 99th percentile game for Patrick Mahomes in dropback success rate. It was the highest of his career. Mahomes set season highs in success rate, 64.7%. He set a season high for EPA at plus 21.5, and the Chiefs topped 30 points for the first time this season. This was also his second highest scramble rate of his career at 17%. He scrambled 6 times and picked up 5 first downs. The Bills' defense just got shredded in this game. And the Chiefs were able to stuff the Bills on 3 QB sneaks, which is an interesting wrinkle to watch for the Super Bowl. Now, the Bills don't run the QB sneak nearly as well as the Eagles do, but it's got to be in the back of your head as you go into this one or go into the Super Bowl. But what were your main thoughts watching this game play out?
I'm going to get to my main kind of takeaway from the game, and it involves Josh Allen. I want to say first, and I know that this sounds like hot take media, and it's the type of thing that I kind of avoid talking about in losses like this and situations like this. Sean McDermott is not beating Patrick Mahomes. People want to make it a Josh Allen thing. This is a Sean McDermott issue. Every single time they face them, the defense gets absolutely shredded. The defense got shredded last week. They just happened to get a fumble from Mark Andrews while they were driving and a drop in the end zone to stop from being a 2-point conversion. And there, I thought maybe the Ravens had some bad play calling in that game and had some issues that maybe they didn't take it as much advantage as they could have at some of the things they were doing offensively. But I said it on this show last week, that Bills defense wears down throughout the game. Sometimes they, and in this game, they didn't even really show up early. So I just think that there is at this point an id, a defensive identity and an IQ of what a Sean McDermott defense is. And you see it in the big spots every single time. I would fire him today. I would either make Joe Brady the full-time head coach or I would bring in a new head coach. And I know that sounds crazy about a guy who's lost in the AFC Championship multiple times now, and obviously lost in the AFC Championship by 3 points. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And at a certain point, what are the Bills going to do to change outside of adding weapons, maybe? I think it comes down to Sean McDermott more than anybody. But what I will say, so this game is 29-29. The Chiefs get the ball back with 10 minutes let me make sure this is good. Chiefs get the ball back with 6 minutes and 15 seconds left. Tie game 29-29. I had a bet on the game to go to overtime. So I was hoping for Chiefs field goal, Bills field goal, or Chiefs touchdown, Bills touchdown, and then I cash a big plus 1,400 in overtime. But I'll ask you, when the Chiefs get the ball back with 6 minutes and 15 seconds left, what were you expecting to happen?
When the Chiefs got it back, I mean, they're going to go score. I expected it to be a touchdown, but yeah.
When the Chiefs got a field goal and were stopped, they only gave a 51-yard drive, 2 minutes. They only take 2 minutes and 42 seconds off the clock. The moment the Bills defense, which I'll malign all day long. They gave up 32 points in the game. I'm not saying they did a good job. But in that moment, the Bills defense did what they needed to win that game. And they got the stop that they needed. Not only did Josh have an opportunity to go tie the game, he had an opportunity, and at the time of that it happened, was favored to go win the game. At the end of the game, Josh Allen was a live favorite with the ball down 3 points. He accomplished 17 yards. 17 yards on the biggest career of your life. And I know the 4th and 5 play hit Dalton Kincaid in the arm. Guess what? You probably shouldn't hit 4th and 5 before you hit midfield on the biggest drive of your life. The Chiefs stopped Josh Allen's run game. It is only less than 4 for Josh. He was not shredded defensive.
Uh-oh, you're cutting out here, Mark. And now you're frozen. Oh, I heard you for a second. Can you hear me?
I'm not frozen. Can you hear me?
No, you're real garbled right now. Pop out and pop back in, and I'll talk about something for a second while you do. We'll see if we can get you back. But the Bills couldn't get pressure in this game at all. They only had a 26.5% pressure rate on Patrick Mahomes. On the flip side, Josh Allen was pressured on 46% of his dropbacks. And so there was a marked difference between the pressure that these teams were able to generate. And I mean, Chris Jones is a monster. By the way, Chris Jones, the only guy with a higher pass rush grade from PFF this weekend than Jordan Davis, which is just funny. But the Bills were just unable to pressure anybody in this game. And Mahomes was on the move. Mahomes was scrambling. They even had a designed run for Mahomes. But to Mark's point about the Bills defense, in the last 2 playoff games against the Ravens and the Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills defense allowed 0.223 EPA per play and a 54.2% success rate, both of which would have ranked worst in the regular season by a substantial margin. So the Bills defense just got gashed the last 2 weeks. the Bills played a lot of man coverage in this one. About half of the dropbacks they played man. It was the highest across 9 matchups they've had with Mahomes. And Mahomes just shredded it, 12 of 15 for 169 yards and a touchdown. I did also want to shout out that James Cook 4th and 1 run for a touchdown. That was an incredible run, lunging, getting across the goal line. They also had a 4th and 5 pass for a touchdown. So the Bills' final 2 touchdowns were scored on 4th downs. The Bills, the Chiefs' defense was playing them well, and they were converting on 4th downs until they weren't. So, Mark, you're back with us now. I can see you. It looks like we'll be able to hear you. So what were you saying there at the end?
I apologize. You can blame the Hampton Inn in Austin, Texas, for the people out there. But I will say the Bills' offense, and I get that they put up 29 points, and I get that the Bills' defense only gave up 32. But the moment the Bills held the Chiefs to that field goal, I don't feel bad for Josh Allen anymore at all. I don't feel bad for Josh Allen. You know, if you get the ball back with 3.5 minutes left, down 3 against the defense that you've been moving the ball against all day long, there's no excuse for getting 17 yards and getting to a 4th and 5 before you hit midfield, in my opinion. If Lamar Jackson has what happened to Josh Allen in the game, the reaction is entirely different. And there's the Barstool. I know you're not a Barstool guy, but Marty Mush out there, who's not an opinion worth listening to, but he tweeted last week. I'm not afraid to say that Lamar Jackson throw to Mark Andrews could have been better. And then last night he tweets, "I legitimately feel bad for Josh Allen. Don't know what else he's supposed to do." And it's like, oh, okay, where's the double standard? Because he's never won anything either. And in the past, Tyler Bass missed a field goal last year, right? That's what prevents it from going to overtime. A couple years ago, the Bills give the ball back to the Chiefs with the lead. The Chiefs score and tie it, and then score in overtime and win it, which leads to the rule changes. Those times, I got feeling bad for Josh Allen. I got maybe protecting the narrative for Josh Allen. I'm done with it now. I'm done. Once he got the ball back down 3, that was his time to get out of the shadow of big brother Patrick Mahomes, and he blew it.
Yeah. All right. I've got a couple of comments here. Brett Eclipse says, me frantically looking around while Mark's stream gets vaporized is hilarious. You never know what you're going to get on the road shows. Krabby Oldman offered to take over for you if we couldn't get you back on. And then Brett Eclipse says, is it crazy that Chris Jones is what causes me more distress for the Super Bowl than Mahomes? Probably, because it's Patrick Mahomes, but Chris Jones is such a good player. Mark, I think you were not back in when I dropped this stat, but Chris Jones, the only player of conference championship game weekend with a higher pass rush grade than Jordan Davis. So he's almost Chris Jones level. The last thing I have on this game, and this is a throwback to the draft when I said this was going to happen, but I said when the Bills traded down and the Chiefs took Xavier Worthy, when he catches a touchdown pass to eliminate the Bills in the AFC Championship game, we're all going to look back at this trade and make fun of it. And Xavier Worthy's season didn't play out in such a way to really make fun of this trade, but Xavier Worthy had 6 receptions for 85 yards and a touchdown and 16 rushing yards, while Keon Coleman, the guy the Bills traded back to take, had 1 reception for 12 yards. The Bills, again, traded down with the Chiefs. They gave the Chiefs Worthy. They took Coleman. Coleman had 22 yards in 3 playoff games combined, while Worthy had 85 yards and a touchdown and 16 rushing yards in this one game. So
50 catches in the last 9 games for Worthy. Yeah.
So, maybe when you have the opportunity to not let the team that you can't beat trade up for a wide receiver, maybe you should take that next time. So Anthony chiming in said James Cook had 13 carries for 85 yards. Saquon's going to go for 200 in the Super Bowl.
I was going to ask you this, and this is really more for next week. We're going to be doing a Super Bowl preview, but obviously we're talking about the results of the game. How does Kansas City stack out as a run defense?
They're not. I mean, I would have to. I looked at their overall numbers. I haven't broken it down too much yet because I've been trying to watch the film and stuff on the other things. But I do know that if you go back and look at the three metrics I like to use are DVOA, EPA, and success rate. And by DVOA, out of the last 3 years, the Chiefs 2 Super Bowl wins in this year. By DVOA, this is the worst offense and the worst defense the Chiefs have had. By EPA and success rate, this is the middle one. It's better than 2023, so better than last year's, but it's worse than 2022, the team that beat the Eagles by quite a bit. So by any of those three metrics you want to look at, this is a more favorable matchup than that 2022 game was for the Eagles. Now, we'll obviously see how it plays out, but there's some of that you can look at. I can look up their DVOA numbers real quick.
Yeah, I do think you're able to pass on the Chiefs. I mean, you've seen that in multiple scenarios. I felt like I don't even know what his numbers ended up being, but CJ Stroud was able to hang in that game and make some big throws and play pretty well in a situation where we didn't have the most around him. He had 245 yards. It's not like he lit it up or anything, but I think Jalen probably has. I mean, I think the over under is 209.5 for his pass yards prop for next week. I would go over that. I do think Jalen has success in this game and gets to that kind of 220, 250 plus area. But I think the X factor is probably how Kansas City defends the run, obviously.
Yeah, they are ranked 17th in passing DVOA and 9th in rushing DVOA defensively. Great follow on Twitter, Eagles, X's and O's. Eric, friend of the show here. He tweeted out earlier that since week 8, the Chiefs are the 21st ranked defense in the NFL, and they have the 19th ranked pass rush win rate. And so it's a gettable defense, but Spags with 2 weeks to cook things up is always going to be fun to watch. Spags versus Vic Fangio, the things we're going to see on defense is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I guess the one thing, there's two things before we kind of move on and before we give away too much of next week's pod. The two things that are kind of making me feel good, because I'm nervous about this game. I don't know how you could not be nervous about going against the Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Kansas City Chiefs at this point, coming off of 2 championships. The two things that give me confidence and that I kind of keep repeating to myself over the last 24 hours is that Spags did not have much of an answer for Jalen in the last time that these guys faced. This isn't a situation like Todd Bowles where you've got skeletons in the closet and this guy just knows exactly what to draw up against Jalen. Obviously, small sample size, but Jalen had a pretty good game, I think, last year when they played in the regular season as well. I'd have to go back and look at that. Obviously, we won the game. But I don't remember Jalen really being confused too much by the Spags defense, and maybe that'll be different this time. And then the other side, it's what I talked about earlier with Josh having the chance, Mahomes and the Chiefs not scoring. There's something that I keep telling myself. The Mahomes teams I know, the Chiefs teams I know that I had nightmares about in 2022 and still think about, Mahomes scores that touchdown. Them getting stopped means a lot to me there. The way that the game was on the line, they could have ended it basically by going and scoring or at least gave themselves not a chance to not lose in overtime. The fact that was left up in the air, and I guess you could turn it around and say, well, the defense stepped up and made the stop. The thing that's so scary about the Chiefs is what's so scary about the Patriots. They're inevitable. What needs to happen will. And this is kind of one of the first times that it didn't. And they got away with it. But I was doing math in my head already, Shane, when the Chiefs got the ball back. Were the Bills going to go for 2 once they scored after the Chiefs scored? I was like, well, in my head, it's already 36-29. Are the Bills going to go down and score? And if they do, will they go for 2? I wasn't thinking, oh, well, the Chiefs might not score a touchdown.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And, we'll see how it plays out next week. And last thing here, and then I'm going to have to run. But somebody chimed in. Travis said that I've heard that Fangio defenses have struggled against Mahomes historically. You got to go.
Terrible team in Denver.
Yeah, in Denver, it was a terrible team. And so I don't know that you want to read, but last year when he was with Miami, the Chiefs the Chiefs beat the Dolphins 21-14, but 7 of those 21 points were a fumble 6. And so they basically in an entire game gave up 185 passing yards and 2 touchdowns to the Chiefs offense. So I'd call that a pretty good performance. And you got to go back into the 2020, 2021 Broncos, who were horrific, to really go more than that. So Mahomes is a good quarterback. It's going to be a tough game, and we'll get into a lot of preview stuff next week. But Mark, I think that's going to about do it for me. I'm going to have to go pick my kids up from school. But before I do that, you got any final thoughts that you want to throw out?
Go Birds. That's my final thought. Hopefully I'll see y'all at the parade.
That's going to do it. That's it. That's the final thoughts that you needed to hear here. Thank you guys for joining us for episode number 187 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode. Drop us a 5-star rating and review wherever you stream your podcasts. We're going to have lots of stuff coming out on the Pinpole Network this week and next week in the run-up to the Super Bowl, so make sure you're subscribed. You can follow us on Twitter. I am at Shane Half NFL. He is at Mark Henry Jr., and we will catch you guys next time. Go Birds.